Tim, where are we?
Obviously, we are in an art gallery, or I don't know, a museum.
Is that obvious?
It's obvious to me.
Okay, fine. Why are we here?
Well, really, it's just some sort of convoluted metaphor, or at least device to give a little bit of an extra oomph to the top of our show.
This one is particularly tortured.
How dare you?
Okay.
Do you remember NFTs?
I do.
Well, they were supposed to transform the stodgy world of museums and art galleries into something fit for the metaverse. What do you think?
Is this it?
Yeah, what do you think?
I don't like her.
Okay.
Just a few months ago, NFTs were all the rage. Paris Hilton went on Jimmy Fallon to explain what they were, only to return a few months later to have Fallon show off his very own Bored Ape, something he reportedly spent more than 200 grand on. People were talking about NFTs not just as exclusive and expensive collectibles, but also as a way to transform the creative world. If we put art on a blockchain, we'd see a fundamental shift in power from the middleman to the creative. Instead of a gallery making all the money, an artist would get a cut each time their piece was sold. It would be easier for musicians to retain creative control. But interest in NFTs has fallen off a cliff. Trading volumes for NFTs, which are basically just digital art and collectibles that are recorded on blockchains, has tumbled 97% from a record high in January. As the hype around NFTs has died down, companies are now trying to find a use for them. Nike bought an NFT studio, Starbucks has launched an NFT rewards program, and luxury players such as Gucci and Tiffany have launched NFTs. So what's the path forward for NFTs? Will we find a good use for the underlying technology? Or, as some critics say, are NFTs worthless and just the stuff of hucksters trying to prey on the unsophisticated?
Ian, how would you explain what you do to a 5-year-old?
What I do now is I run the consumer business at a company who does security for digital assets. And if I was talking to a 5-year-old, I'd probably say, there is digital stuff. It'd be much easier if it was a 15-year-old because you would say, do you know, have you ever bought a skin in a game? And they would say, yes. And I'd say, okay, well, we make sure nobody can steal those things from you.
Let's bump it up to a 10-year-old, still prepubescent. Your title is Chief Experience Officer. What does Chief Experience Officer mean when we're talking about the digital world?
Well, you know, we're in sort of the very early stages of this transition to a world that actually has digital stuff, digital belongings, scarce digital goods, digital things that you could lose. And the user experience is pretty bad. You know, I mean, there's, you know, it's sort of like the early days of the internet. You didn't say, go to my website. You said, get a computer, get a modem, get an ISP, get a web browser. Okay, now go to my website. You know, now you just say like, hey Siri, go to a website, and it goes to the website. You know, that's what's happened over the last 25 years. The same thing will happen over the next 25 years in the world of digital assets and cryptocurrency and digital value.
Oh, well, I want to talk about some of those digital assets. We're going to speak later in this episode with John Reek Stark. And he basically thinks that digital assets are a scam. And we're not necessarily just talking crypto here. We're talking from the NFT perspective, the idea of digital goods that don't exist in the real world, but only exist online. Kind of like the equivalent in the metaverse or online version of like owning a pet rock, buying a pet rock. Did you ever have a pet rock?
I never had a pet rock. I think my daughter had a Tamagotchi, so we could use that as an analogy.
Wait, what did you say?
My daughter had a Tamagotchi.
Yeah.
You know, we could use that analogy.
Did you have a Tamagotchi?
I think it's Tamagotchi.
Did you have one of those?
I had a Tamagotchi.
I bet you did.
For sure.
That sounds like, you didn't have a pet rock.
I also had a Neopet. It was big on
That's
Neopets.
what you had.
Oh, Neopets. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like
those.
that was the original metaverse, and sort of your Neopets were the original NFTs. I mean, Neopoints, I lived and died by those, even though they were virtual currencies.
I actually don't know what you're talking about. But the fact is there are a lot of critics who just say, this stuff is worthless. It only exists in a digital space, and it's not real. We're not buying it. What do you say to them?
I say, honestly, what I say is, eventually you'll be dead. Because, you know, younger generations who grew up, you know, through COVID and go to school on Zoom and live digital lives and spend 8+ hours a day on their phones, and that it's not a foreign concept to them at all. And also, look, I'm 50 years old, and I graduated college in '94, and I remember very well the people who told me the internet is nonsense, the internet will never work.
I'm really glad that you brought up the example of the internet, because I've actually tweeted to this effect before. Like, if I think about what I would have tweeted in the early 2000s about the internet, they would have been absolutely terrible. But to that point, I would have really said a lot of really stupid things that are now stupid in hindsight. But the point remains, the internet, I can see a use case. I have just the entire world of information at my fingertips. For a smartphone, I also see the use case. Maybe it costs way too much, but it does have a use case. But for NFTs, what is the use case?
I mean, there are tons. So let's figure out where we want to start. I mean, there are tons of things. Like, you have a lot of. Let's just go with something very simple. 15 years from now, your government-issued ID will be a digital asset. I mean, I find it super ironic that the technology I used to get into parties at NFT NYC was technically more secure and better than the technology I used to get into the United States from France to come, to come to America. So that's just a very simple one. Now look at even just like the fact that when you use Apple Pay to pay at the local vegetable shop, which, in my neighborhood in Paris, they didn't want to do 3 years ago, right? It took COVID to get them to actually want to take digital money. But why is Visa International involved in that transaction, right? Am I taking it on credit? I'm not. I'm trying to do a digital cash settlement, right? And that's actually technically possible, but not yet happening. So these are just the most basic of things. I just spent 5 years working with LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, big luxury conglomerate. The people who are in the luxury business have spent the last however many years, trying to explain to people why you have a $3,000 handbag. Why do you have a $3,000 handbag? Why do you wear a t-shirt that says Thrasher? Why do you wear a t-shirt that says Slayer? Why do you do so many? Why do you have a MySpace page once upon a time, right? To be an individual. Like, this is just, basic human, behavior. Let's look at another example I love to use is just the example of digital art. I mean, we agree that there's an art market, right? We agree that a Basquiat is not worth what it's worth because of the wood and the paint, right? It's a cultural artifact, right? A piece of art is a cultural artifact. And the reality is that there are many great digital artists out there, and when two people have a value exchange around creativity, I would say that's a more beautiful digital business than, say, an advertising business where you steal someone's attention and sell it to someone else.
Can I just make one point really quickly? As you were talking about MySpace, it occurred to me, I actually spent money for a Neopets premium account just so I could unlock certain things and certain features to put on my Neopet. Unfortunately, you're seeing the evolution of my thinking in real time.
So speaking of art and cultural artifacts, I'm glad you brought it up because I have some fine art right here. This is the Mona Lisa.
What is that? Is that you?
This is me. This is me as the Mona Lisa.
That's awful. I don't like this.
Katie didn't know this was happening.
I don't have a better reaction than that. That is just foul.
Did you bring this because I live in Paris?
No, but you've probably seen the real thing at the Louvre. But it actually
it's quite small.
It raises an important. It's like about this size. It raises an important question, though. I mean, does it matter that if I have a printout like this, does it matter that it's not the original? From an NFT perspective. Like, if you have a replica of an NFT.
Or if you have a replica of the ticket stubs that you've collected.
And the Mona Lisa is a great example. I mean, I have been to see the Mona Lisa at the Louvre more than once. Every time I've gone, the room is full of people who want to see the Mona Lisa and take pictures of it. Right now, you go outside 2 feet, and there's 1,000 Mona Lisas. There's Mona Lisas on T-shirts. You want to buy another one. My favorite is the Mona Lisa who's dabbing. Right, that's a popular one these days. But it doesn't really seem to prevent people from wanting to see the real thing, right? Because there is actually only one. And let's be honest, like, human beings are story-consuming creatures, right? It's not the Mona Lisa. It's the fact that the Mona Lisa has notoriety. Mona Lisa has notoriety for particular reasons, and the Mona Lisa has become the Mona Lisa and the subject of a Slick Rick song and the subject of heist movies or whatever.
What is she smiling at? I don't know.
it's storytelling. This is all storytelling. We are story-consuming creatures. That's part of the reason I love this space, is because it makes you ask those original questions of like, what is value? What is money? What do we care about as people? Look, I find this stuff quite easy, frankly, because I grew up collecting records. I grew up collecting fanzines and skateboarding and being a part of these. Again, you wear a T-shirt that when you wear it to the mall, if there's another skateboarder, they come up to you, right? That was what it was like in the 80s. So to me, these things make a ton of sense, And what I say to my colleagues at LVMH is, who I have this similar conversation with often, you want to tell me that if I kill a cow and I color the skin and I cut it into pieces and I stitch it together into a bag, oh, that's craft. But when Matt Cain makes an extraordinarily complex, beautiful, artistic project called Gazers, oh, that's not craft. Why? Because it's digital? Oh, come on. I honestly, I'm offended that you would even, that someone would even say that, because it's an individual, it's an artist who has a craft. Now again, whether you like a Louis Vuitton handbag or not, you don't need to. Lots of people don't. Whether you like Matt Cain's Gazers or not, that's up to you. But don't deny that people do. Right?
Ian Rogers, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We're talking NFTs, and we're talking about their use cases when it comes to art, so we should probably talk to an artist. People pleaser is what she goes by, but also her real name, Emily Yang. Emily, good to see you. So what do you see as the possibilities for NFTs when it comes to your work and when it comes to your life?
Well, I mean, I really shouldn't be saying this as an artist, but it makes sense that NFTs started taking off because of art, because it's visual and humans are visual creatures. So, it's easier for us to make the connection in our brains. But my opinion is that NFTs should be way more than art. And it should actually just be sort of the underlying technology that runs infrastructure in society, including, documentation, ticketing, and things like that.
But to your point that there's uses for NFTs beyond art, do you think that NFTs are the best vehicle for art?
If you don't like physical things, then probably. I've adopted a much more nomadic lifestyle recently, like many others in crypto, and then you actually just get into this mindset of not wanting physical things because they're a burden when you travel. And a lot of people, in the real world who have too much money and don't know where to spend it also buy art and then store it in, what are those called? Ports?
Yeah.
Yeah, for tax purposes, right?
Yeah, but that's taking up space, physical
Same with
space.
mine.
Or
Yeah.
maybe that was just an episode of Billions I saw. I don't know if that actually happens.
And so, I'm all for nowadays, being able to flex that I spent a lot of money on a piece of art, but I don't have to, I can just pull out my phone.
How do you flex that?
How do you flex?
That you spent money on a piece of art that doesn't exist in the physical world?
I mean, you can take a screenshot of the purchase and then post it on your Instagram story.
But couldn't somebody then take a screenshot of your Instagram story and post it on their Instagram story, and it looks no different than...
Sure, if you owned a Ferrari and then I went to your house, I can sit in your Ferrari and take a photo, and then I can pretend that it's mine.
And a lot of the FX scammers on Instagram do that.
Wait, but there is, if we play this metaphor out completely, the difference is that if the Ferrari's mine, I can drive it around and it can take me places and it drives fast.
Well, if you knew how to use Ethereum, you'd be able to interact with your NFT or transfer it to somebody. I couldn't transfer that NFT to myself, right?
I don't know where to go from there. That was a good point.
So John, what is your issue with NFTs? What's your problem with them?
The problem that I have with the fact that you've got some sort of fractionalized hyperlink to a JPEG file or the metadata of a JPEG file as a representation of some sort of investment.
Yeah, what's your problem with that?
My problem with that is it's ridiculous. It's absurd. There's nothing to it. It's a giant scam. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. It turns victims into victimizers. It's one of the most absurd things that has come up. And it evolved from, they had initial coin offerings, but the SEC cracked down on those. And then, lending products and SAFs, SAFTs, the SEC cracked down on those. So It's just an end run around that with more nonsense, more crypto nonsense.
So it sounds like your problem isn't just with NFTs, that it goes beyond that, deeper than that. It's with sort of the idea of the crypto ecosystem in general.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I worked at the SEC in the enforcement division for almost 20 years. I was 11 years chief of the Office of Internet Enforcement. I've been teaching law school at Georgetown and Duke for 20 years. And this stuff is so obviously a scam to me on so many levels. So all of this hype and nonsense is just awful. And it's really, I think, done some awful things to the world.
So it sounds like you're not a hodler.
God.
No.
Okay, we got that out of the way. We got that out of the way.
I am curious.
The externalities are so terrible. Ransomware attacks. I mean, it does have one good use for criminals.
John, what if it's, I get what you're saying. I completely get what you're saying. And it does make sense to me. But what if you think about it from the perspective of a luxury good? And you think about it from the perspective of somebody who lives online and who does play a lot of games and does believe there is going to be a metaverse. You know, why not pay for a luxury item in your own digital world? If, after all, I mean, and look, I'm not buying this stuff, but you know, there are people who pay $200 or $300 for a pair of foam slip-on shoes that probably cost a couple dollars to actually manufacture.
Are you talking about Crocs?
No, Yeezys.
Oh my God.
You know, and like $200, $300
Yeah.
for these like
Yeezys. Hey, I'm a sneakerhead.
You're a sneakerhead.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge sneakerhead. I just went to SneakerCon with my son and bought and sold sneakers.
This
Wait
is
a second.
interesting,
I get it.
John.
I
You're a
get-
sneakerhead? You should love NFTs.
I'm a sneakerhead. I'm wearing my if you can see my brand breads right now, my Jordan 1s. So no, of course I don't love NFTs because I'm a sneakerhead. I think they're still so ridiculous. If you want to flex with your NFT, you want to buy your NFT and put it as your icon or whatever it is on your Twitter account, go ahead, have at it. But the marketplace, let's think about the marketplace where NFTs are bought and sold, because most people buy them thinking, wow, this is going to go up and I'm going to make a lot of money. And most of those people are the people who aren't very sophisticated when it comes to investing. So let's think about that. Those marketplaces, they're incredibly corrupt. Match trades, wash trades. The fraud isn't just encouraged, it's taught. Turn on YouTube. If you're promoting an NFT and you're not using fraud and match trades and wash trades and sock puppets to somehow tout and manipulate the price of your NFT, you're committing malpractice in that world. So if you want to just buy this stupid picture and put it up somewhere, go ahead. And you think that's a flex, go ahead. But if you're buying it as an investment, which most people do, it's absurd. And you know, that's why the market has tanked. I mean, it's just absolutely tanked. People have finally figured it out. And it'll just keep getting worse because it's so ludicrous. You know, it's Alice in Wonderland. It's absolute nonsense.
Never read that, actually.
I can explain it to you.
I do want to go down the sneakerhead rabbit hole a little bit more. Is that an Alice in Wonderland reference?
Yeah, I
the
think
rabbit
that
hole?
is.
No
I don't
kidding.
know.
Anyway, but I guess the point we're trying to make is you're paying a lot of money for sneakers, which do have a use case,
Yeah.
but you're paying a lot more for the status symbol of I have these sneakers, where you could buy a pair of sneakers that cost $100, but you choose the luxury item. And for people who live
Right.
extremely online, I mean, maybe it's the same sort of vibe.
I think that's fine. If you want to go buy your Rolex or your Louis Vuitton bag or your Jordan sneakers and strut around in them, I don't have any problem with that. But when you talk about it as an investment, like the way NFTs are, and you build a marketplace around that, there's several things that happen. Number one, a lot of people get ripped off because they have no idea what they're buying, they have no idea what they're doing, they're just hoping it'll go up. Number two, criminals will use those marketplaces as places to launder money or move money around for different nefarious purposes. So you're opening up the world to all these dire externalities. And at the same time, you're putting a lot of people at risk. And that's why the SEC is there. You know, I mean, there's special laws around the way investing is done to protect people and protect them often from themselves. You may be a libertarian and say, look, I don't want those protections. I just believe in caveat emptor, and I just want to live the way that I want to live. Well, that's fine. You can make that argument to Congress. But right now we have these statutes and these rules so that people can't do this kind of stuff. They can't do an initial coin offering. They can't do a lending program. They can't do a SAFT. All of these things are unlawful.
John, I do want to ask, you know, you've mentioned a few different times that you're a professor. I got to know, what are the perspective of your students? What do they say? I assume you guys talk about this.
Oh, Katie, what a great question. You know, first of all, I like to teach my students how ridiculous all this stuff is, and they love to challenge me. Okay, but once we get into it, I just, again, I'm not the smartest guy that's ever taught law school, and, you know, but it's not difficult to combat all this nonsense and ridiculousness because there's no there. And so I do think you're right. The younger generation look at me and say, okay, boomer, you just don't get it. And that just makes me laugh. And that I put together a website called digitaltrustwatch.com, totally free. Anybody can go there. And so I put a lot of the research that I've done, which is years and years of research, on this website, so people can see it and read for themselves. So they got to stop telling me, hey, you just don't get it.
Well, John, have fun being poor. Sorry, that's just how I had to end it.
That was so fun.
That's what they say to you, right?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head,
Okay,
Tim.
good.
They tell me how fun being poor. They tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, on Twitter, look, I don't make a nickel from being a crypto skeptic. Not one nickel. I don't profit in any way, shape, or form.
John, thanks a lot. This is really great. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Great meeting you both.
I don't know. I kind of felt like you had a moment when you were talking to Ian, like some sort of epiphany.
I did have a moment. When you think about the fact that I participated in a digital world for many years, I spent more money, more real money than I should have, for items for that digital world, kind of made sense to me. I don't know. Did you have a moment?
You hear one guest and they're really convincing. You hear another guest and they're really convincing. I wouldn't say I've had a moment.
I'm going to make it my mission to find your moment.